But first, there's this. Overnight, Iran launched retaliatory strikes on Israel as the IDF announced the death of Iran's Minister of Intelligence. This one day after the killing of Iran's security chief, Ali Larijani, and the head of the Basij militia. A senior Israeli official telling Fox News overnight about the strike, saying this man had American blood on his hands. His network specifically targeted current and former U.S. officials, including President Donald J. Trump. The U.S. deepening strikes in the region, dropping 5,000-pound bombs on Iranian missile sites along the Strait of Hormuz coastline. CENTCOM confirming that these sites posed a major risk to the international shipping route. Joining me now is the former Consul General of Israel in New York, Ambassador Ido Aharoni. Ambassador, great to have you this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here.
So what is your assessment of this war so far?
Well, militarily, I think the execution is incredible. When you look at the American side, the Israeli side, the degradation of the Iranian military complex, their military capabilities. And for the first time since 1979, Iran is being punished for its motivation, for its ideology, not just for their actions. And I think this sends a very powerful message throughout the region. And this is how you restore deterrence. And this is exactly what is being done.
It's a great point that you make, because throughout the region, you're actually seeing the Gulf states agree with that statement. They want the Iranian leadership to be decimated. This is a group that they, in the past, may have actually brought into the fold. But Iran has been clear. And now look what's happening in terms of the strikes coming from Iran into the United Arab Emirates.
Not only that, Iran made a terrible mistake attacking Cyprus, thus bringing in the European Union. They're losing one of their main arguments, right? By bringing in the European Union, they're exposing it doesn't make any sense, the position of Europe not joining in. Iran is presenting a threat to the entire world. Every country that is interested in stability should look at Iran as their main adversary. Not to forget that Iran is a centerpiece of the anti-American axis led by China. When we talk about what is happening in the Straits of Hormuz, at the end of the day, the story is China. The story is energy. The story is how Americans are going to develop leverage vis-a-vis the Chinese.
It's a great point, and I've been pointing this out for the last few weeks, that President Trump has really strengthened the U.S.'s hand when it comes to the #1 adversary, China, with what he's done in terms of Venezuela and now Iran. What's your take on the strategy? You've got Israel hunting down Iranian regime members, the Journal writes, in their hideouts one by one, whereas the U.S., their strategy seems to be taking out these military sites, like those areas along the Strait of Hormuz with these 5,000 pounds.
Yeah, so it's a function of the size. The Americans have the size, Israel has the intelligence, and so the division of labor naturally is the United States is focusing on destroying the military complex, the infrastructure. Israel is more on the decapitation of the leadership, and I think both efforts are extremely successful. The question is how sustainable what the Iranians are doing right now is for them. The closure of the Straits will harm them long term. There's no question about it. It's not sustainable as far as Iran is concerned. So the big question is, how much time do we have? How many weeks before we can see a real change on the ground?
You know, I usually do not quote John Bolton, but I thought what he said really rang true. And so with regard to the Europeans pushing back, saying this is not our war, does this set up, this is something that John Bolton said, does this set up President Trump for at one point turning around and saying Ukraine is not our war? Your take on what the Europeans are saying right now? I
think the Europeans are making a terrible mistake because Iran is a problem for the entire Western civilization. It has been a problem since 1979. It's a sworn enemy of Western values. And so not to see that is just a rare case of diplomatic blindness and negligence, if you ask me. They have to be actively involved.
You know, what is your take on Russia? The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Russia is sharing satellite imagery and drone technology with Iran right now. The Journal reporting that Moscow is improving its technology to aid Iran in targeting U.S. forces in the region, providing information on the location of the military in the area. You know, we know that China has been assisting Iran. not just buying 90% of its oil exports, but perhaps sharing information like that. Now we see this evidence from the military on Russia.
So I think the Russians are probably helping the Iranians to survive. Iran's game is winning by losing, meaning if we remain standing at the end of the day, we won. That's their resistance, national and theological ethos, and we're all familiar with that. The point is, again, to what end? What is going to be the end game for the Iranians? A lot of people ask that question about Israel and the United States, but the real question is, what is the purpose of the Iranians in this whole thing? They're not going to be the same regional power that they were before after this. It will take them decades to rebuild the infrastructure that was destroyed. Not to mention the fact that the new leaders, the new people that will occupy the position will be all inexperienced. And it's going to be a system in dramatic and total disarray for years to come.
Ambassador, what is your expectation for the end game here on this war?
So I think what will happen is we need more time. I think that it was a big mistake to overpromise in the beginning, both by Israel and the United States. The public doesn't like when you overpromise, and then by definition, sometimes you take the risk of under-delivering. And so I think that you will wait to see the cracks from within. Who brought down the Soviet Union? The Soviets. Only the Iranians can bring down Iran, this regime, not the Kurds, not any other minority group. It will have to come from the Iranians themselves. And the good thing that is happening right now is that the conditions are being given to the Iranian public, to the Iranian people. The conditions are being created to overthrow this regime that is victimizing in the first place its own people, which is a point that American media sometimes fails to mention. The Iranians are the #1 victims of their own regime.
Now, is there any support for one person in terms of taking the lead next in Iran, do you think?
No, we don't know who it is right now. Larijani was the guy who was calling the shots. Clearly, he's taken out. The head of the Basij is out. The Iranian system is in complete disarray right now.
All right, we will leave it there. It's great to have you this morning, Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Ambassador Ido Aharoni. We'll be right back. Stay with us.